Hello, this is Steph Houghton, the Irritated American. What I want to talk to you about today is something that doesn't irritate me, but rather interests me. And that is a video by Mr. Beat reacting to a video by Johnny Harris about inflation. And I think they both kind of get it wrong. So I want to, or at least if not wrong, they're not being specific enough. So I want to discuss with you inflation today. And the way to start doing that is by defining it. Inflation is an increase in aggregate prices. That is, it's an increase in prices across the economy. So the basic cause of inflation is that there is either an increase in the money demand for goods in the economy, or there is a decrease in the amount of goods to be sold in the economy. So you can think of it as demand, D, divided by supply, S, equals prices, P. To take an oversimplified example, suppose there is $1 million worth of demand in the economy, and there are 100,000 units worth of goods in the economy, then the price level will be $10 because 1 million divided by 100,000 is equal to 10. But now that we've said what inflation is sort of mathematically, the next question is what constitutes aggregate demand? And so aggregate demand is basically the quantity of money it's the product of the supply of money and the velocity of the circulation of money. So if there are $500,000 in the economy and people spend those dollars twice in whatever relevant unit of time, then the velocity of money is equal to 2, or there's an aggregate demand of $1 million. So the only way there can be an increase in aggregate demand without an increase in the quantity of money is if people start to not want to hold their money as long. Like if they spend their paycheck the moment they get it, instead of holding some of it back as a reserve against unanticipated expenses and things like that. So it's important to realize, therefore, that one of the things that can increase the velocity of circulation of money is an increase in prices, is inflation itself. Because obviously, as your money starts to be worth less, because prices are rising, then the obvious thing to do, and this is when things start to get a little bit serious, is people start spending their money as soon as they get it. The classic example in the German hyperinflation was that workers would be paid at the beginning of the day or at lunch hour, and then their wives would show up and they'd hand them their pay packet for that day, and their wife would go out and spend it immediately because prices were often being increased multiple times a day as the inflation got totally out of control. So it's important to realize that while an increase in the velocity of money can be an exogenous factor, it usually isn't. It's usually driven by other factors. Though obviously an increase in a payment system and something like that can have some effect, but the primary determinant of the velocity of circulation is the desire to hold money. So obviously, if credit is tightened, if it's harder to get loans, or if the interest rate is going up, which makes loans more expensive, then that will decrease the velocity of circulation of money, because people will want to, business especially, who need to have working capital, will have to increase their holdings of money in order to be able to meet their expenses as they arise, instead of having a line of credit. And the same thing, for consumers, if they are having a hard time getting a credit card because banks are less willing to lend money, then obviously that will also decrease the velocity of circulation. So when Johnny Harris says that the reason that we have inflation is because of the stimulus, He's absolutely right. There is no doubt that that is one of the causes. There was some criticism of him because he said that he only pointed out to the fact that the money that was just given to everybody, as opposed to by which I mean to the common citizens, as opposed to support for business, which was almost as large. But I think it is important to say that that it doesn't matter really. Like, I mean, I guess for political reasons, if you want to argue about, you think Johnny is like putting down supporting the citizens in this way. I mean, I happen to be a very conservative or libertarian person, and I don't generally think that deficit spending is a good idea, printing money out of thin air. In this case, I happen to agree. I actually think we should almost never have run deficits. So when you have an emergency like this, or a war or something like that, then your credit is as strong as it can possibly be, and you can open the spigots and spend because you have to. My point is, this should be an emergency option, not something that we do as we unfortunately do every year. So, but the point is, the increase in the quantity of money is definitely one of the causes of inflation. And Johnny Harris is absolutely right about that, and Mr. Beat doesn't disagree with that. But what Mr. Beat does say is that another possibility is an increase in aggregate demand, which is of course true, but you have to ask yourself, how is there going to be an increase in aggregate demand without either an increase in the quantity of money or an increase of the velocity of circulation of money? Now, I think it's quite possible that people who were not so badly off saved the money that they got from the government. In fact, the bubble in the stock market implies that that's probably true. And now they're spending it. That once they could get out of the house, they started to spend. So there might have been a temporary decrease in the velocity of circulation when they were holding that money, and then, anyway. It's complicated, as he says, but really, when you say that there's an increase in aggregate demand, you have to mean that either the quantity of money has increased or the velocity of circulation has increased for some unexplained reason. So that's one half. The other half, which they rightly point out, is that you could have inflation due to, in this case, supply chain issues. And that's undoubtedly part of it. But it's just, I don't want to say be unpleasant, but it's just preposterous to think that you can pump, trillions of dollars into the economy and that's not going to increase the price level. I mean, it has to. So we would have had inflation even without the supply chain issues. So I think, that's what I wanted to really point out, is that the idea that that Mr. Beat puts out, that there can be just sort of these random changes in aggregate demand, is not really credible, because the only way for there to be an increase in demand is for there to be an increase in the quantity of money or of the velocity of circulation.